You ever sit in a room full of smiling people, champagne in your hand, and feel like a damn fool? That's where I was, standing stiff in the middle of the president's marble palace, pretending like I belonged among the sharks. The air smelled of cigars, perfume, and power. Then it happened. Brandon Cole, the fat cat CEO who thought he owned the world, swaggered toward me, pointing his stubby finger across the pool. "That one," he barked, his voice oiled with liquor and arrogance. "I'm buying her tonight." I followed his finger, and my heart fell through my chest. He was pointing at Jessica, my wife. Brandon smirked. 10 grand for her. $100 for you. Buddy, grab yourself some beer. Everyone laughed. I expected Jessica to slap him, to walk over to me, furious and insulted. Instead, she grinned, like she'd been waiting her whole life for an offer like that. "Of course," she chirped, throwing back her champagne, her heels clicking eagerly as she strutted toward him. The laughter got louder. I didn't hear it anymore. I didn't throw my glass. I didn't punch Brandon Cole's smug face. I simply turned, walked to the villa's grand dining table, pulled the divorce papers from my jacket, and placed them neatly between the silverware and the imported caviar. Jessica didn't even notice. She was too busy climbing into Brandon's blacked-out Escalade, already halfway out of her dress before the door slammed shut. I left without saying a word. Left the party. Left the betrayal. Left my so-called children, who later that night would text me, telling me to calm down and forgive Mom. Disloyal brats, they defended her. Chose her. I chose myself. For the first time in years. I drove until the city lights became a blur, a river of molten gold in the rearview mirror. Freedom tasted bitter. But it was freedom all the same. I didn't cry. Not yet. I wasn't that lucky. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mr. Walker?" A bored female voice. "This is Officer Simmons at the 5th Precinct. Your wife has been robbed. She claims she lost all her identification in the $10,000 sheet." She paused. I could almost hear the judgment dripping down the phone line. I cut her off. "She's no longer my concern," I said. And I meant it. For the first time since I slipped that ring on her finger, I meant it. I hung up, tossed the phone into the passenger seat, and kept driving into the darkness, leaving the ruins of my old life burning somewhere behind me. That night, as the miles rolled by, I realized. Sometimes revenge doesn't come with blood or fire. Sometimes it's just the simple, cold act of walking away and letting them rot in the hell they built for themselves. You think betrayal happens in a single, explosive moment. It doesn't. It creeps. Like a slow poison you don't even realize you're swallowing. Looking back now, it was obvious. Jessica had been slipping away long before Brandon Cole ever waved 10 grand in her face. It started small. A laugh too loud at text messages she wouldn't let me see. A sudden obsession with her appearance, tight dresses she never wore for me, heels that could kill a man if she kicked hard enough. "Just trying to keep things spicy for you, babe," she'd purr, kissing me with lips that tasted like deceit. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Then came the late nights. "Work's crazy," she'd sigh, tossing her bag onto the couch like a worn-out martyr. I'd smell whiskey and expensive cologne clinging to her hair, but she'd swear it was just the cab driver's fault, or the ladies from accounting, or some other bull excuse that crumbled if you looked too close. I didn't look. I didn't want to. When you love someone, you build entire castles out of lies just to avoid seeing the crack in the foundation. One night, she came home with her blouse buttoned wrong, too fast, too sloppy. Her lipstick smeared like a crime scene. I asked, joking, "Rough day at the office?" She laughed too loud, too sharp. "That's what you get for marrying a hot mess," she said, spinning into the kitchen for more wine. A hot mess. She wasn't wrong. Another night, I found a gold bracelet under our bed. Not mine. Not hers. At least, not one I had ever seen. She claimed it was her coworker Madison's, left behind after some girls' night. I wanted to believe her. So I did. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting that the woman I loved had become a stranger I couldn't trust. The phone calls came next. At first, whispers behind the bathroom door. Then full-on shouting matches when she thought I was asleep. "Stop calling me here." I heard her hiss once at 2 a.m., the hiss of someone desperate, cornered. I confronted her the next morning. She smiled sweetly, stretched her arms around my neck, and said, "It's my boss. He's just a creep. I handle it." She handled it, all right. Handled it with her back pressed against luxury hotel beds and her voice whispering promises to men who didn't deserve them. By the time the company party rolled around, I was a hollowed-out version of myself. A man living with a ghost who smiled pretty and smelled like stranger's cologne. But I still went. Still put on the suit. Still held her hand like it meant something. Because part of me thought maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. That I was just being paranoid. That if I loved her hard enough, loud enough, she would remember who we were. She didn't. She chose Brandon Cole without a flinch. You don't lose someone overnight. You lose them piece by piece. By the time the final piece falls, you barely recognize the wreckage you're standing in. That realization hit me harder than any slap could have. Jessica wasn't stolen from me. She sold herself. And in that moment, watching her giggle into Brandon's ear, drunk on attention and greed, I realized something even uglier. She had been for sale for a long, long time. I was just too blind to read the price tag. I didn't plan to confront her. Not at first. After the party, after watching her sell herself for a few zeros and a wink, I thought I could just vanish. Cut the cord. Walk away clean. But you can't amputate a part of your soul without bleeding first. 2 days later, she came home, whistling like she'd won the damn lottery. Shopping bags dangled from her arms, new shoes, new purse, new perfume. All bought with the tycoon's dirty money. Look what I got, babe, she chirped, holding up a sparkling necklace like a trophy. As if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't sold our marriage to the highest bidder. I sat at the kitchen table, silent, the divorce papers already signed and folded neatly in front of me. Jessica didn't notice them. Too busy admiring her reflection in the window. Where'd you get the money? I asked, my voice dry as dust. She paused, just for a second. Barely a flicker. But I caught it. She plastered on that fake smile she used when she was lying through her teeth. Oh, you know, Brandon felt bad about how drunk everyone got at the party. Give me a little bonus for all the hard work I've been putting in. I stared at her. At the woman I had loved for nearly a decade. At the stranger she had become. You're lying, I said quietly. Not yelling. Not accusing. Just stating the fact like reading a label on poison. Jessica tossed her bags onto the counter with a loud sigh. Oh, come on, Jason. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a little fun. I didn't actually do anything serious. Fun. I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Selling yourself for a few bucks is your idea of fun now? She crossed her arms, her posture shifting from fake sweetness to open hostility. What's your problem, Jason? It's not like you've been surprised lately either. Always working late, always tired, never any excitement. There it was. The classic spin, turn it around, make it my fault. Make me the villain for not noticing how fast she was running from us. I gave you everything, I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. I built a life for us. And you threw it away for, what? A shopping spree and a cheap thrill. Jessica laughed. Actually laughed. Not the sweet giggle I used to love. A hard, ugly sound that scraped across my nerves like broken glass. You think you're some big hero? She snapped. You're boring, Jason. Safe. Predictable. You don't make me feel alive. Alive. She needed danger. Excitement. Things I wasn't stupid enough to offer anymore. You could have talked to me, I said, my fist clenching on the table. You could have said you weren't happy. Yeah, and then what? She shrugged. You would have cried and begged and promised to change. And I still would have ended up bored to tears. No remorse. No guilt. Just cold, brutal honesty served with a sneer. That was the moment I knew. There was nothing left to save. No apology that could erase the filth she'd smeared across our marriage. I slid the divorce papers across the table toward her. She glanced at them like they were a coupon for expired milk. Fine, Jessica said, picking up her phone. Guess you're not the man I need anymore. I smiled. A real smile this time. Because finally, I could see her for what she truly was. Not a victim. Not a confused soul. Just a selfish, lying parasite who fed off love until it no longer tasted sweet. She walked out that night, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. And for the first time in forever, the silence she left behind was a blessing, not a curse. The door slammed behind her like the final gunshot at an execution. The house, once filled with noise and laughter, now hummed with a silence so thick it felt like drowning. I sat there for hours. Didn't move. Didn't think. Just stared at the empty chair across from me, half expecting Jessica to pop back in, to scream, to cry, to apologize. She didn't. She was probably already halfway into some other man's bed, laughing about how easy it was to break me. The clock ticked. The walls closed in. And still, I sat. The first wave hit hard, pure rage. I punched the table so hard the glass of water tipped over and shattered on the tile floor. The sound didn't even faze me. It was almost comforting. Destruction was better than silence. I wanted to wreck everything. Tear down every photo, smash every gift she ever gave me, burn the damn house to the ground. Instead, I just sat there, trapped. The second wave was worse. Sadness. Heavy, paralyzing sadness that crawled into my chest and anchored itself there. How had it come to this? How had I become a man so disposable, so easy to walk away from? I thought of the vacations we planned but never took. The promises whispered late at night. The dreams we built like children stacking blocks, too naive to see how easily they could topple. All lies. Every smile, every kiss, every whispered, "I love you," a rehearsed performance by a woman who saw love as a transaction. It wasn't just the betrayal that crushed me. It was realizing how blind I had been, how stupidly loyal, how willing I was to bleed for someone who wouldn't even give me a second thought before selling herself off for a little cash and a new necklace. By midnight, the sadness turned into something else. Clarity. Jessica was the type of person who would always blame someone else for her own rot. She would always chase the next high, the next thrill, the next wallet stupid enough to open for her. And I was just collateral damage. A stepping stone on her path to nowhere. That realization didn't heal the wound. It didn't erase the ache clawing at my gut. But it did something almost better. It made me angry in the right way. Not the kind of anger that destroys everything. The kind that rebuilds. I stood up, went to the bedroom, pulled out the suitcase she had always mocked me for keeping too organized. I packed what mattered. My documents. My childhood photos. The one or two gifts from family members who hadn't stabbed me in the back. Everything else, the couch we picked out together, the bed we shared, the TV she insisted we had to have, I left. I didn't want any piece of this poison life. I wrote a note, short and brutal. "You can keep the house. You already turned it into a graveyard." I placed it on the bed. No signatures. No goodbyes. As I zipped the suitcase closed, a strange peace settled over me. Like I had finally stopped trying to save a ship that was destined to sink. I walked out the front door without looking back. Got into my truck. Turned the key. Felt the engine rumble under my hands like the heartbeat of a second chance. For the first time in years, I didn't feel owned. Didn't feel trapped. Didn't feel less. Jessica had thrown away something priceless. I wasn't the fool anymore. She was. I drove into the night, leaving behind not just a woman, but a whole damn life that wasn't worth saving. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like silence. A heavy, echoing silence that follows you into every cheap motel room and sits at the end of your bed like a vulture. I spent the first few nights on the road in a rundown place called the Sunset Inn. Flickering neon sign, stains on the carpet, a bed that creaked every time you breathed too hard. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A place without Jessica's perfume clinging to the curtains. A place where I could start being someone new. I thought about changing my phone number, cutting all ties, letting the past rot behind me. But part of me, the stubborn, foolish part, kept the same number. Maybe because I wanted closure. Maybe because I wanted her to call, just so I could hear her beg. The call came sooner than I expected. 2 days after walking out, my phone buzzed at 3:13 a.m. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Jason. It was her. Jessica. Her voice was different now. No fake sweetness. Just pure panic, raw and ugly. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold enough to freeze hell itself. I need help," she stammered. "Please, it's bad. They took everything." I sat up in bed, the old anger flickering to life inside me. "What are you talking about?" "They robbed me," she wailed. After Brandon, I went to this other party. Some guys invited me. They took my purse, my ID, the money. Everything. I have nothing, Jason. I'm scared." I let the silence stretch so long she started sobbing on the other end. The sound used to tear me apart. Now it just sounded pitiful. "You're not my problem anymore," I said. Flat. Unforgiving. "But I don't know who else to call," she screamed. "I'm stranded. Jason, please, you can't just leave me like this." I laughed. Actually laughed, the way she had laughed at me that night across the table. It felt good. Cleansing. "You left yourself," I said simply. Then I hung up. I stared at the cracked ceiling for a long time afterward, the silence settling over me again, heavier this time, but no longer suffocating. She was spiraling, crashing into the bottom she deserved. And I didn't have to lift a finger to help her. The world had a funny way of balancing itself out. Later that day, I got a call from a police officer. Same tired voice, same indifferent tone. "Sir, your wife filed a report about a robbery. She's claiming she lost $10,000 and all her personal documents." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "She's no longer my concern." The officer didn't argue, just thanked me and hung up. I imagined Jessica, alone and humiliated, clutching her empty purse, realizing that all the games she played had finally caught up to her. And I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a clean, hard emptiness where she used to live. Some ghosts you bury. Some ghosts bury themselves. I checked out of the motel that afternoon, got in my truck, headed south, away from the wreckage, away from the woman who had mistaken herself for a queen, only to end up nothing more than a pawn discarded on a dirty sidewalk. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet. And it tasted like the first deep breath after nearly drowning. I thought the worst was over. I thought once I left Jessica behind, the poison would stop spreading. I was wrong. The next betrayal came dressed in familiar faces. Voices I had once cradled in my arms. The so-called family I had sacrificed everything to protect. It started with a text. From Liam, my oldest. Short. Cold. Sharp. "How could you abandon her like that?" I stared at the screen, blinking. The words didn't make sense. Abandon her? She had sold her dignity for a shopping spree, and I was the villain? Before I could even respond, another message came in. This time from Ella, my daughter. The one who used to sit on my shoulders during fireworks shows, giggling like the world would never hurt her. "You're a coward, Dad. Mom needed you." I almost threw the phone across the motel room. Almost. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, to feel every ounce of the betrayal sinking into my chest like a knife. They didn't know the whole story. They didn't see Jessica drunk on power, selling herself like a cheap prize to the highest bidder. They didn't want to see it, because it was easier to blame the man who left than the woman who wrecked everything. I typed back, hands shaking. "She chose this, not me." No answer. Only silence, thick and accusing. Later that night, I got a voicemail from Liam. I played it on speaker, letting the cold words wash over me. "You always cared more about your pride than your family. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with being the victim, Mom wouldn't have had to find happiness somewhere else." I laughed bitterly. Happiness? She found a handful of dirty bills and a sleazy tycoon willing to buy her for a night. That was their idea of happiness? The rage simmered low in my gut, but I didn't respond. Didn't call back. Didn't fight. What was the point? You can't rescue people who don't want to be saved. Not even your own blood. They had made their choice. And as much as it gutted me, I had to accept it. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who stands beside you when the walls come crashing down. And Liam and Ella? They chose to stand with the wreckage. With her. It was the kind of betrayal that didn't scream. It whispered. It eroded. It hollowed you out from the inside, so slowly you almost didn't notice until you were standing there with nothing left. I packed my things again. Not much to take. Just a suitcase full of clothes, a few old photos, and a heart held together with anger and regret. Before leaving, I scrolled through my contacts one last time. Looked at their names. Jessica. Liam. Ella. Deleted them all. No ceremony. No goodbye. I wasn't erasing them. I was freeing myself. If they wanted to side with a woman who treated loyalty like loose change, they could have her. I wasn't crawling back. Not for them. Not for anyone. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and drove again, this time with no destination, no plan. Only one rule. Never look back. Because some bridges aren't burned by accident. Some bridges are meant to light the whole damn past on fire. And I intended to watch it burn until there was nothing left but ashes. Rock bottom isn't a place. It's a person you become when there's nothing left to lose. I spent the next few weeks in small towns nobody cared to name. One night in a battered motel with broken locks, another sleeping in my truck under the cold, empty sky. Freedom was raw. Freedom was ugly. But it was mine. At first, I didn't know who I was without Jessica. Without the life I had spent years building around her fake smiles and broken promises. But slowly, like an old engine sputtering back to life, I started to remember. I got a job at a mechanic shop outside a dust-blown town. Grease under my fingernails. The smell of oil and sweat thick in the air. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't impressive. It was real. Real in a way my marriage never had been. Real like the ache in my muscles after a 12-hour shift. Real like the laughter shared with the other men over cheap coffee and busted knuckles. Nobody asked about my past. Nobody cared. They only cared if you could pull your weight and didn't whine when life kicked you in the teeth. Perfect for a man like me. At night, I'd sit on the tailgate of my truck, beer in hand, watching the stars stretch out over the black horizon. No more fake dinner parties. No more smiling while dying inside. No more Jessica. For the first time, I didn't feel hollow. I felt clean. Worn down, beaten up, but clean. I started writing again. Something I hadn't done since I was 20. Scribbled thoughts on napkins, receipts, the backs of gas station maps. Not poetry. Not novels. Just raw, ugly truth. Stories about betrayal, survival, rage, and something else creeping in slowly like dawn after a long, cold night. Hope. I stopped checking my phone. Stopped wondering if Liam or Ella would ever come to their senses. Stopped hoping Jessica would show up crying, begging, realizing what she threw away. She wouldn't. And even if she did, I wasn't the same man she could manipulate anymore. I wasn't angry for what happened. Not anymore. I was grateful. She didn't destroy me. She revealed me. She stripped away all the lies until all that was left was the man I was supposed to become. I got my first paycheck, greasy and folded, and didn't blow it on things to impress anyone. I bought a small second-hand guitar from a pawn shop instead. Sat by the truck most nights, plucking broken tunes from rusty strings, letting the music fill the spaces where rage used to live. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I was alive. And that counted for something. One night, after finishing a shift where I scraped my knuckles bloody fixing an old Ford's busted engine, I looked in the mirror. Really looked. Not the beaten man Jessica had laughed at. Not the abandoned father Liam and Ella had cursed. A man rebuilt from ruins. A man who wasn't afraid to start again. The scars would stay. They always do. But they weren't marks of weakness. They were proof I survived. And that survival? It was the sweetest revenge I could have ever asked for. Because somewhere out there, Jessica was still chasing thrills she would never catch. Still lying. Still sinking. While I was climbing. Slowly. Quietly. One honest breath at a time. If you're waiting for some fairy tale ending, for me to say I found new love, new riches, a new perfect life, you're not going to get it. That's not how real survival works. Real survival is messy. It's quiet victories no one claps for. It's going to bed alone but peaceful, instead of sharing a bed with a liar and pretending it's love. It's waking up, looking in the mirror, and seeing a man you don't have to be ashamed of. Some nights, the ghosts still visit. Jessica's laughter in the back of my mind. Liam's angry voicemail echoing in my dreams. Ella's silence louder than any scream. But they don't control me anymore. They're just shadows. And I'm walking in the sun. Looking back, it's almost funny. I thought losing Jessica would destroy me. I thought the betrayal would hollow me out until there was nothing left. Instead, it stripped me down to the bones and let me rebuild into something stronger. Something real. The pain taught me more than love ever did. Pain is honest. Pain doesn't lie to your face while climbing into someone else's bed. And if there's one thing I want every man to understand, it's this. Don't beg someone to love you. If you have to fight to be seen, to be respected, to be valued, you're not loved. You're being used. Jessica didn't betray me because I wasn't enough. She betrayed me because she wasn't enough, not for herself, not for anyone. She needed constant validation, new thrills, endless attention, a bottomless pit nothing could ever fill. And that's not something you can fix. Not with flowers. Not with promises. Not even with a lifetime of loyalty. Some people are born broken. And if you're foolish enough to tie your soul to theirs, they'll drag you into their wreckage and call it love. Don't let them. Learn to walk away when the first crack appears. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to know you deserve more. I wish someone had told me that years ago. Would have saved me a hell of a lot of heartache. But maybe you hearing this now can save you from making the same mistake. Today, I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I'm not adored by adoring children or surrounded by adoring friends. But I have something better. Something she can never take from me. Peace. Real, solid, hard-earned peace. And if you asked me if I regret it, the marriage, the betrayal, the collapse, I'd tell you no. Because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you needed to find what you were always meant to be. And me? I was meant to be free. Not perfect. Not polished. Just real. If Jessica ever thinks of me, if she ever regrets the night she sold herself for a dirty handful of bills, it's not my burden to carry. Her karma is catching up, faster than she can run. And me? I'm already gone. A man rebuilt from fire. Wiser. Harder. Stronger. And, finally, free.